Okay, lesson number 2. I'm feeling in a pretty good mood, so let's get on with that. We're going to take a look at Trumpy Bear. But before we get there, let's just summarize a little bit what we did last time. First of all, remember this. The only way we're going to make any progress is to back up and take a do-over. Fix the stuff we didn't do right the first time. The other thing from the first lesson about Congress was Eisenhower's warning about the rise of the military-industrial complex. And you know how we can see that right now. We're spending $1 trillion on the military, and while military might is a necessity to deter any aggression, it doesn't have to be a $1 trillion necessity. We can get by with at least half of that and still be spending way more than China and Russia combined. Okay, so the military-industrial complex. Now, one thing I might have neglected to mention was because of Congress's ineptitude and total non-functionality, because of the Supreme Court's Citizens United decision and putting money in their pockets and so forth, any laws that need to be enacted that are absolutely crucial to this country should be voted on by everybody in the country eligible to vote. So we'll have to get a method enacted into law whereby we can vote on amendments to the Constitution that affect everybody, should be voted on by everybody. We can't go through this archaic process of having the legislatures of all 50 states ratify amendments by 3/4 vote. We know we can't trust those legislators now because of the increased flow of money from the lobbyists and the various pharmaceutical industries, oil and gas, you name it. Anybody that has a vested interest is going to be paying Congress a lot of money to do nothing. And that's where we are now. So any amendments have to be voted on by everybody. And among those things are clean air and water. This cannot be a political football. Where Obama did the right thing, and Trump just reversed everything. That was part of Trump's whole reason for running for president. I'll explain more about that in a little bit, and you'll see exactly what I mean. But clean air and clean water are non-negotiable. We have to have those to survive, and it has to be a standard whereby we have the cleanest air we can possibly have and the cleanest water. We do have some industries that are necessary, and we will have to allow some of our major waterways to be kind of dumping grounds for certain things, but not to the extent that they are now. I mean, I was raised in an area of the country in northeastern Ohio where the Cuyahoga River used to catch on fire. Think that wasn't fun? A river catching on fire. Cleveland's done a lot to clean that up, though. I think they can actually fish in there now. Hopefully they can anyway. Okay, so that's one thing. Clean air and water, non-negotiable. We have to have them. And it cannot be a political football. The other thing is global warming. Pretty much that's going to be taken care of by individual efforts to purchase an electric car, to do what you can to keep that car charged and help out your own energy needs. Anything that you can do along the lines of solar panels on your house, or perhaps small wind turbines, it is all going to help, and that's going to be a major part of cleaning up our energy industries. That's individual effort. We can't be looking to build gigantic solar panel farms here and there and huge wind farms that pretty much trash birds anyway, unless they're armed with special cameras that shut them down when the wind blows or when they spot a bird. But that's neither here nor there. The primary effort is going to be individually, locally. You and I, plus our local governments, and maybe a small wind farm outside of town. Since we're going to have electric vehicles, we're going to need the energy to run those. So we do need to have a increased capacity to generate electricity, because we're going to be using a lot of it. So there's that. Global warming, we have to be not a follower, or right now Trump got us out of the climate agreement that was enforced at Paris, and we're not even part of that anymore. It's amazing what Trump's done. He took everything, and this was by plan. He took everything that Obama did and reversed all of it. Even made a lot of the things just intolerable. He took the Environmental Protection Agency and turned it into the Environmental Destruction Agency. He took the Department of the Interior and turned it into, he turned it into, let's pollute this country as much as we can. He's not looking out for anybody but himself and his rich cronies. We'll get to Trumpy Bear in a minute here. Campaign funding. We do have to address that issue. This Supreme Court decision of Citizens United and contributing to political campaigns by the lobbyists and the powerful pharmaceutical and energy industries, just for a few. We have to come up with a solution to that, and we'll have to enact that into law too. That also is going to require a constitutional amendment, so we could probably get some ideas from Congress, but that's something we need to vote on, all of us, every last one of us that votes. And one other thing I know is big popular, I have a little touch of emphysema now. That's from smoking cigarettes and marijuana for 50 years. And I know that's a big topic among all the states now. A lot of them have already decriminalized it and even legalized it. recreational marijuana use. That's something we need to vote on as a country. I think nationwide it should be decriminalized. We shouldn't be paying money over and over and over and over and over again for smoking a joint on the way out to have a good time with our friends. You know, I personally love to sit down, and I don't much anymore, but I still would enjoy doing that, and that is having a little marijuana and listening to music. Anything from Hendrix to Beethoven to Luciano Pavarotti. It could be any number of things. I'm a big music fan, and I love to smoke a joint. Well, not smoking anymore. I prefer edibles these days, but I just love the relaxation and mental gymnastics, I call it. It's kind of like it's your mind. It frees your mind up to go where it wants to go. I like Gracie Slick and Jefferson Airplane used to say in that song White Rabbit, feed your head. And that's what I like to feed it. Besides the usual food, you know, I like to feed it a little pot. All the other crap, don't waste your money on it. It really tortures your body. It's very non-functional. You know, cocaine, speed, all of them. All they do is make you talk a lot and go a little bit faster, which is horrible for your body. So we need to vote on that as a country to decriminalize, and those states that want to then can legalize if they so desire. That's going to be an individual right according to the states. Okay. Another thing, and this is something Trump was guilty of too. When he decreased the size of Bears Ears National Monument and the Grand Staircase Escalante, he did it so that they could start uranium mining around there and feed his cronies a little bit of profit, like they don't have enough money already. But when a president names a territory or a national park as a protected area, it should stay at those dimensions. And God help you if you tread into the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge. Leave that place alone. We do not need the oil or gas that's there. We have enough contiguously within the United States. We don't need to be bothering those poor animals. They've got enough to deal with. So get the hell out of there. Plus potholes up in northern North Dakota and Minnesota area. It's a major breeding and rearing ground for birds, ducks, geese, cranes, you name it. Anything that migrates south in the wintertime goes back there to have their children and raise them in the summertime. And Trump decreased the size of that so they could start drilling for oil around there, screwing up the potholes. Potholes are just really very little lakes here and there and everywhere. And it's a beautiful area, and we need not to be trashing that. Okay, one more thing, and this also ought to be a constitutional amendment. When we vote on things, we have tended over the years to go towards electronics because we want instant results. We've got to have those results right now so we know who's what and what the laws are, and so on and so forth. We need, and all of those are hackable. They are machines. They are hackable. And if we allow our current politicians, they want to make it as difficult as possible, especially the Republicans, and their voting rights abuses for God knows how long, as long as they've been Republicans mostly. So we go with paper ballots for everything. Takes a little longer, but it's going to be more accurate in the long run, and therefore fair to all parties concerned. Okay, Trumpy Bear. Here's a few things first. Now this is something very good for our younger folks to hear. During my many travels, I've been all over the country, except to Alaska, Hawaii, and the Great Northwest, Washington and Oregon and Idaho, and Montana. Probably North Dakota too, but I haven't been there, and I haven't been to the Northeast, Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Hampshire and Vermont. But I've been just about everywhere else, all of the other states, in my many travels. Going fishing. Going down to Florida as a college boy, chased two-legged deers. And one thing I found everywhere I've gone, and that is 99% of the people that you meet and run into are great people. They're salt of the earth. They're good, honest, hard-working, fundamentally religious folks, and you have nothing to fear from them. That's 99%. The other 1% are assholes. Now, I know that's a cuss word, and maybe you're offended by it, and if you are, I apologize, but there is no other way to say it. They are assholes. They have always been assholes. They will continue to be assholes long after we're gone. And there's nothing you can do about them, except to try and limit your contact with them. And this is one thing I found works very well. I'm very fond of living in smaller cities, not big metropolises. And the reason being this: in a smaller city, we have proportionally the same number of crazy assholes as bigger cities do. But in smaller cities, we know who they are, and we can pretty much avoid them. Bigger cities, you can't always do that. I mean, this guy you're talking to that sounds like he's a good guy might be holding a gun in your ribs in the next 2 seconds. You don't know what's going on. So that's just a little wisdom to pass on there for yourselves. Keep an eye on them small cities. Alrighty. Trump. Let's get to Trump. What I'm going to do is tell you why he is the way he is, and just point out to you some of the things that he does, which you're probably aware of already. Trump is a perfect example of what's called the Peter Principle. The Peter Principle states that you will rise in your endeavors or in business to your level of incompetency. You will go as high up in the functionings of those companies or in your endeavors till you reach a level that you can no longer handle. And Trump has far exceeded his level of competency. This presidency is way over his head. Just look at what he's done so far. He's pissed off every ally that we have. Everybody in the NATO pact, everybody in Europe, countries in South America, Africa. He's insulted everybody. He's tried to incite all the governments to his racist immigration policies. Europe's done a wonderful thing by taking in a lot of the Syrian refugees. What Trump doesn't understand is these people are not moving because they like the weather over in your country more than they do in theirs. They're running for their lives. They are quite literally running for their lives. They know if a lot of those folks had stayed in Syria, they would most likely be dead today because that country is run by an idiot. Trump probably admires them. I don't know that for a fact, but it certainly makes sense to me. Anyway, he's pissed off every country that we know of, incited most to try to instigate racist policies into their immigration laws. Backed us out of the climate accords, and we certainly can't afford to do that. Made buddies with Kim Jong-un, it was another loose wheel, and the two of them driving the bus just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me at all. I mean, good God, can you even imagine a country run by Trump and Kim Jong-un? China, we kind of get along with China, but that's something that really needs to be looked at. Why are we enriching a communist country of their size? One of the reasons is our companies over here want to sell things to all those billions of people, well, billion and whatever they are, 1.3 billion by now. They want to sell products to them so our companies can get richer. So we have to do business with them. We have to trade with them. So our stupid companies, they just don't get it. We're empowering a communist nation that treats its citizens like animals. They use artificial intelligence to spy on their entire citizenry. They get good points and bad points for doing good things and bad things. It's unreal, unbelievable. You know about Tiananmen Square, when they brought the tanks out to quell the unrest. The riots there when China promised they were going to allow Hong Kong to remain a democracy, and I guess they lied about that one too, because they want Hong Kong underneath their thumb, just like the other territories they've tried to do that to. The Uyghur population in northern China, who are predominantly Islam. China wants to keep them under their thumb too. And Taiwan, which we support, right off the coast of southern China, could one day be a great sticking point, but we'll see what happens there. Back to Trump. Okay, we already know he's pissed off to everybody. When Trump was a younger man, let's do this first. You notice when he talks in his speeches, anything that he does is great, glorious, monumental. He likes to talk in superlatives. And all of his buddies, anybody that's on his good side, they're a wonderful person, they're a great American. You've heard all the rosy little things he says about everybody. And anybody that opposes him is the worst. And the worst ever. And totally non-functional. Disgruntled. Any superlative word that you can think of. Least. Worst. It's kind of like Hitler when he talked about Untermenschen, which were, what he meant was people that were lower than life, like the Eastern Europeans is what Hitler was referring to. Trump does the same thing. He talks in superlatives. And he also likes nicknames like Sleepy Joe Biden. The nicknames are intended to demean the status of the individual. Now, how did he get that way? Well, when Trump was a younger man, his father, Fred, sent him to learn how to be a bad guy, basically. He sent him in, they were living in New York. He sent him to talk with a Shyster lawyer called Roy Cohn, C-O-H-N. Those of you that are close to my age may remember the Army McCarthy hearings of the 50s, where there was a big pinko communist scare. Everybody was a communist, and we had to get all the communists out of the government, and communist this and communist that. The leader of that supposed purge was Senator Joe McCarthy from Wisconsin. He was about a half a drunk, and Roy Cohn was his lead lawyer, his main advisor. And I think Cohn is the one that probably cooked up the whole program, just to get Joe a little bit of notoriety so he could rise up and Cohn would rise with him. So that's where Roy Cohn gained his reputation as a instigator, and just not very nice guy. He was always getting McCarthy to denounce somebody else as a communist, and then they'd have hearings, and they blacklisted Hollywood writers. So many people were damaged by these purges. Then they started taking on the military, and that's when it kind of all fell apart. The military said, look, pal, this just isn't true. Stop your nonsense. And Joe McCarthy kind of fell into oblivion. I think he pretty much drank himself to death after that was all over, because he did die young. But that's where Roy Cohn comes from. He is any of you who know what a Shyster lawyer is, he is the epitome of a Shyster lawyer. So Fred Donald's dad sends Donald, young man Donald, probably in his 20s around this time, to Roy to learn how to be a tough guy, a bad guy. And what he learns listening to Roy was, Roy said, if somebody sues you, you sue them back for at least double what they sued you for. Now that makes everybody think that you're in the right because you're suing them for more money. And probably used or probably learned the use of superlatives, studying more or less with Roy. But Roy Cohn just more or less taught Donald how to be a hard ass in business. Always take the offense, never be on the defensive. If somebody does something to you, you do it back to them twofold or more. And that's what Donald has done his whole life. Now, Donald was no rising star in his youth. He was kind of a hard case, All of the Trump money came from Granddad. I forget his name at the time. This was Fred's father, and he made his money up in the Yukon, in the Klondike, when they struck gold. He went up there and sold shovels to everybody that wanted to be a miner, and miner supplies. He had restaurants, and made a pile of money, and brought it all back and invested it in New York real estate. So that's how Trump gets into the big real estate players in New York, Manhattan. It was Granddaddy Trump who eventually left his money to Fred, Donald's dad, and there was Donald, and I think he had two brothers. One unfortunately drank himself to death, and I think the other one pretty much keeps quiet, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken about that, but I don't think so. Anyway, that's how Donald got to be Donald. When he was even younger, Fred was having some discipline problems with him, so he sent him off to military school. Because Donald wasn't the brightest student of all the students around, so he thought maybe military discipline would help him, and Donald actually thrived in military school, rose through the ranks and got up to be whatever it is you get to be in military school. So Donald kind of liked that structured environment. Now he gets to business, and he goes through his usual Trump stuff. He's just making money hand over fist because all the real estate that Daddy Fred owns in Manhattan, so he goes to the best schools. I'm still not sure where he went to college. Columbia kind of sticks in my mind, but I'm not really sure about that. Certainly it was something Ivy League. So when Donald becomes of age to come into Fred's business, Fred gives him $1 million or two, a little bit of money, and says, here, go do something, make some more money out of this. And Donald probably turned into a slumlord. I don't know specifically what all of his endeavors were, but he probably took that million and turned it into something along those lines, nothing spectacular. And so Donald kind of struck out on his own. He had build up his money, and eventually, when Atlantic City legalized gambling, Trump said, "Ooh, boy, I'm going to jump in on this." So he went down there and built the Trump Taj Mahal and some other smaller casino. He had two of them going. And when gambling went bust in Atlantic City, Donald lost his ass. Both of the places. And if it wouldn't have been for Fred holding the purse strings and being around, Donald would probably be homeless today. I always find that kind of amusing, Homeless Trump. Anyway, so Fred bailed him out. And Donald, after that, stuck to building golf courses. He took up golf, so he got pretty good at golf, I guess. I'd love to play him head-to-head. Most definitely. For a beer. Not millions and millions like he does with his friends, Anyway, that's how Trumpy Bear got to be Trumpy Bear. And that pretty much sums up Donald. The Peter Principle, remember that he has risen to his level of incompetency. As I've said before, he is the best at one thing. He is the best, worst president we've ever had. So next time, I'm not sure what I'm going to discuss. This has been lesson 2. I'm kind of leaning, I think we ought to take a good hard look at global warming. So those of you that might still harbor any doubts will no longer have those doubts. Okay, as Tigger would say, ta-ta for now.